Can operate it.
Pretty much. It's a lot of troubleshooting.
Yeah.
I think we should be okay. I know.
She works one day a week around here. 60 miles away. She's got two of mine. This is Tony, by the way.
It's a lot. I remember
Start
when I
to
was
figure it out. I looked at you, I
All right, hi. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna start. We got our live stream up. So I'm gonna introduce Paula Johnson on our second day of our series of the Minister to the Suffering, and Paula's gonna talk about the ministry to the innocent or the children. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here. I'll just maybe tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a licensed marriage and family counselor over at the Center for Family Counselor, and that's right in St. Cloud. So, though I do have satellite offices in Little Falls and Wadena, so I travel around a little bit because we live up north. Is it all working okay? Yep. Okay. Anyway, I also have a master's in theology that I got at Steubenville, which is really was a blessing for me to help me understand my faith a little bit more. We always think we know our faith, but we never can quite get to the end of it. We're always learning. I always tell my clients that come in, well, if I was all done, if God was done with me, I wouldn't be here. So he's still working on me. Well, I looked at just the word of suffering from the dictionary. And it said the state of undergoing pain, distress, or of hardship. And I think that's kind of good for us. I was looking at all the different four things you were looking at, that when others are in that place of distress, when they're in that place of pain and hardship, we really would like to help. We would like to minister. We would like to bring our faith. We would like to bring ourselves to help. And oftentimes it's very hard to know how. I know today we're kind of looking at the innocents, more or less the children. You know, how is it when children are suffering? How do we reach them? How do we minister to them? And I looked at my client load last night, and I think I have about half children or adolescents. And there is a different approach. But if you think about it, we all have that child within us. And if we just kind of allow ourselves to be childlike, and to approach them and to reach them and to talk with them, we really do pretty well. I always think of that line from 2 Corinthians 1, 3-7, that we do console, this is not verbatim, but we do console others with the consolation that God has given us. So I think that's the first place to start, really. How has God consoled us in some of the hard times in our life? You don't have to be very old before you have gone through hard times. And it doesn't have to always be exactly the same kind of suffering. For instance, perhaps you've gone through some financial suffering, and you've prayed and you just realized how God took you through it. That doesn't mean that you can only talk to people who have gone through financial problems. You can talk to anybody who is struggling. Children oftentimes are struggling with relational suffering. They might be bullied. They don't feel like nobody likes them. They have a low self-esteem. You know, there could be some abuse there, physical, verbal, sexual. There could be all kinds of things happening to them. But the end result is that their feeling about their self is really low. And very often when we feel low about ourselves, we strike out at others. So they're probably the ones that have behaviors and that are really kind of irritating to be around. But I think we need to look past that, because children have a reason for everything they do. And sometimes if we take the time just to be there or to ask them. Now, they don't really talk like us adults. You know, when I have children in session, I don't, say, well, how are you doing today? And, what are your feelings and what have you worked through? Like, I would get just a complete blank stare if I did that. So instead, when they come in, I connect with them. And I want to think that not just in therapy, but in life, you need to connect with them where they are. So if they come in with a superhero T-shirt, you say, whoa, what superhero is that? You know what I mean? Just go to exactly where they are. You can pick anything to just kind of let them know that you enjoy being with them, that you accept them and you're there for them. That's a beautiful blue top. Matches your eyes. It can be any little thing. Or, boy, you got a smile today. What happened? They're very easy to share if you don't maybe ask them a difficult question. Well, what are your feelings today? Those are just oftentimes too hard to work, unless you kind of come at it gradually. So think about that. We all have that capacity. Even children that are sick, you know what I mean? They're still children. They still care about superheroes. They still have all their same hobbies. They still care about their friends in school. Just to be with them and to ask them questions we would ask anyone else. It really helps them, because then they don't feel so different. I mean, they know they're going through a hardship, but they also like to know that they're still accepted. It's kind of, I think what you can do is kind of figure out, think about it, that parents and caregivers oftentimes figure out what's going on with their child. Like they might throw a tantrum and, who's ever in the room will think, oh man, he's really disobedient. They never do any discipline. And, the mother might say, oh yeah, he didn't have a nap today. And you know what I mean? It's like there's a lot of things that go into how a child acts, and really us too. We're not very nice either when we don't have our sleep, when we haven't eaten. We can become very irritable ourselves. So it's good to kind of look and wait a minute and think, okay, now what's really going on with this child? He could be hurt or lonely or angry. There's Dan Siegel kind of made a theory, which I think makes a lot of sense to me, is that there's this window of tolerance that we all have, adults, children, it doesn't matter. But and as long as we're in this window of tolerance, we're doing fine. We can handle life, but then all of a sudden, if something pushes us past that, we lose it. We have a meltdown, we escape, we get angry, whatever we do, whatever it is that we do when we get past this window of tolerance. So kind of our job, not only for ourselves, because we still got to work on it, is to make this window of tolerance just a little bigger, And if it gets kind of to the point where they are out, then kind of bring them back, let's go sit down for a while, or whatever it is that needs to calm them down. Or sometimes if they have too much energy, you have to do the opposite. Let's go for a walk. You got to kind of go with what do you see in that child? Is it, there's a lot of people that have a lot of anxious energy, especially with everything going on. And there was a lot to be anxious about before. And now they're more anxious. So whatever we can do to reassure them that, we're there, we care about them. I don't know if you've ever been in a hospital or something, and when you have to wait a couple hours for somebody to come, seems like forever. So it could be Mickey Mouse walking in the door, and you would be very happy because there's someone there, someone that, that cares that you're there and that you're suffering. I'm not going to really address, how to help children, but I think that's common knowledge that if you see something that's abusive and that's wrong, that you do need to report it. You need to get them help. This is maybe looking more at, the children that we might see in our lives. It could be our relatives, it could be our neighbors, could be anything that are just going through a hard time. It's, could be a divorce, it could be, their parent lost their job, it could be, now with all the school, they don't see their friends. There's so many things that kids, they suffer with. It's kind of the suffering. And I think that a good thing to remember is that we cannot give anything that we don't have. So if we have kind of worked out in our mind a little bit, well, why does God allow suffering? Most all of us can see that when you're right in it, there's no answers. But that when you get a little bit away, you see that He has used it and that you have grown. The hardest times in my life, I've grown the most. When things are easy, skate. But so God allows those flows back and forth. But for us to be able to, so that's the hope that we have to offer, even to children. And I kind of came up with just some simple little ways that we can share our faith. Because you want to take in mind where the child is, where the parent is, how much have they learned. But, you could always say, well, I'll pray for you. It's amazing that people instinctively know that if you're praying for them, that's good. They might not even know about God a lot, or they might not know about Jesus, but they have a sense that if you're praying for them, that's a kind thing to do. Or even to say when you leave, well, God bless you. Just all those little things is bringing in the fact that, that God is a part of this. He's a part of your life, and He's also a part of this hard time. Okay, I want to look at the sayings that I thought last night, see if they came back to me, but they didn't. Okay, so just a minute here. Okay, one of the things that's important is that kids will often say, I don't know. And that means a lot of things, but basically it means I don't know. Like I don't know how to express it. I might feel it in here, or I have no idea. I have one client that likes to say, I have no idea what you're talking about. And that's a time like, okay, let's back up. You know what I mean? Let's get really simple. Wait till we see that light of comprehension, you might mention a Bible story and they'd say, I have no idea what that is. Oh, okay. Then you just back up. Well, what do you know about God? And then kind of build from wherever they are. Use your faith to kind of help them, but, don't. God takes us all at different paces, and He never pushes anything on us. So you have to, because if we get too pushy or if they at all feel judged, that's an immediate, okay, I'm not saying another word. So, and frankly, I probably feel the same way. If I feel somebody's judging me, I might not share a whole lot with that person. So it's not just children. But use the word wonder. Think about it that, God is such a mysterious God. And He reveals Himself to us in so many ways. It was a beautiful readings today, too, that, God has to be first. If God's first, and then, we bring Him inside, and then we give Him to others. It doesn't go the other direction. We can be kind, we could do whatever, but if we want to bring our faith, we have to first make sure that we have that faith to give. That we are able to give them the hope, really. I think anybody that's suffering needs to know that there's hope out there, that people care, there's hope, and that it's not for no use. So if you use the word I wonder, or think of it even as a question, but you could say, I wonder why God lets some things happen. And then, yet I believe he loves us. So what you're doing is you're allowing the child to kind of, wonder or doubt, which we all do, to kind of look at that. Yeah, I wonder. It's like, I don't have the answer, but I wonder, yet, what, and you're sharing your faith there at the end. Like, I believe he loves us. Now, that you're not even requiring that child believes it necessarily. It's almost like you're believing for him at that present time. I know my husband and I have always talked about my dad, who really was a blessing in our life, and he brought us along in our faith but oftentimes he believed until we learned to believe, and he hoped until we could learn to hope. And so it's that gentle sharing that really helps. Or I wonder who hurt the bully when he was little. Sometimes if you take the focus off, now it's still a suffering, and it's still, you deal with that, but if you can kind of move it away a little bit to seem like, that bully isn't the most horrible monster, but just someone else who is very hurt. That helps them. It kind of helps them not to feel so hopeless or not so helpless, like this is just another one who is hurt. Or I wonder why people make bad and mean choices that hurt God in us. Simple things of the truths of our faith. And, God will give you just the right thing to say to every child that he brings in your path, that he wants you to show and to help and to minister to. So, it's not like you got to memorize anything, but that it's kind of that simple thing of both. First, really validating where they are, and then offer just a little nugget of our hope and our faith. Or we could even say, I wonder how God will help you through this hard time. Like, we don't have to have all the answers. Wondering with a child really kind of empowers him. I know a lot of the play therapy that I do, a lot of people don't understand it, but we have to let the children win, because they have gotten into situations, they have no choices, and they feel so disempowered, like nothing I say matters, nothing I think matters. And so just even playing a game where the child gets to make the rules. If he needs to win that day, he can cheat. You know what I mean? And I don't even make a secret of it, really. Sometimes I play kind of, distracted, which actually I am, so I don't have to play too hard. But, I don't work too hard to win. But if I do win, then that has to teach him too. How is it when you lose? But basically, most children that are suffering need to win a little bit more than we do. So it's not about teaching them the exact rules of the game, or it's not about making sure they don't cheat. Sometimes that's their little way of feeling just a little better about themselves. And actually, there's a lot of growth that I see for me in play therapy when that's allowed to happen, when they're allowed to feel like they can speak up and they can kind of do things a little their own way. And they always know the difference, because they tell me, oh yes, I can cheat here, but I can't cheat at school. So, they know that here they can do that, there they cannot. But I think sometimes we get kind of competitive. In fact, I know at different times my husband and I said, let's take a break from playing games. We're too competitive, And then we come back to it. So, you want to win, or there's no fun playing, but, you have to find that in-between ground. And I think one of the things, too, that you can offer, especially if you're a caregiver, or you could be a friend or a grandparent, whatever, is that you give them as many choices that they can have. Because usually in their suffering, they don't have hardly any at all. So, but not to say, well, whatever you want to do today. That kind of throws who's ever the caregiver or the parent like, I don't know if I'm ready for that. So think of 2 or 3 at the most, you know. Which of these 3 games would you like to play? Or, you know, which of these 2 things would you like to do? They always say in parenting, make sure that both of them is a win-win for you. Don't say, you know, would you like to go fishing or something when you hate fishing? Don't do that to yourself. Let someone else who likes fishing say that. So kind of, you have to put yourself in there. I know that when we have 13 grandchildren, and just to interact with them is a challenge because they each are so unique. And even though they're not always in suffering, our daughter just recently miscarried, and she lives kind of in our addition, and she has 5 children. And it was amazing to see the children work through that, each one in their own way. You know, my daughter is very talented, and they were all drawing pictures, making prayers, you know. I think they teach us a lot, really, of how to, but because my daughter had faith, you know, all along she said, well, you know, we're not sure if this baby's going to live, you know, because she did have a miscarriage about a year ago. So they were all just praying and yet looking for God's will. So hard things do happen. And children have to kind of deal with it in their own way. But I think they've come out a lot stronger, very much stronger. One of the things that God kind of laid on my heart, too, is to remember that even though we're talking about children today, is that oftentimes the wounds that we get as we are children, we don't deal with. And they're still there. They're still inside. And wounds kind of come from believing that whatever happened to us, a lie. Either that very often they're, you know, the enemy, you know, he's not too creative. They're about the same lie. That, you know, either I'm bad or it's my fault or I'm all alone or, you know, I'm not good enough. They're very similar lies into many different things that we experience. And God never gets tired of healing no matter how old you are. I've had some 80, 70-year-old women that just have kept things inside for a long time. And so maybe for us to realize that we might be dealing with an adult who has a child wound within them. And to be just as alert to that we're ministering to that child in the same way within us. You know, I've often thought when I've prayed the rosary at the joyful mysteries that they sounded kind of sad to me, really. You know, Mary goes to the temple and presents Jesus, and then Simeon tells her that he's going to pierce her heart with a sword. In that, you know. So, I mean, there's that joy and there's that sorrow that is interconnected. And in fact, the 7 sorrowful rosary of Mary, one of them is the presentation with the sword. But yet, that it's put in the joyful ones, and that, you know, I think Mary kind of gave it to one of the saints, just shows us that she worked through that sorrow, that she found joy there, and that she didn't stay stuck on it. Or the other one where she lost Jesus for 3 days. I meant, having children, I can hardly imagine, because I have lost them in the supermarket for about 2 minutes, and you get frantic. You look around, and all of a sudden they are not there. So just the thought of 3 days, though I've often felt that 3 days was very, you know, pointing to the fact that Jesus would be in the tomb for 3 days, and that Mary would be without him. But I'm sure she didn't think of all that then, that there was just not knowing. And then even when he said, well, didn't you know I had to be at my Father's house? At that time, she didn't understand that yet either. So, You know, God doesn't always give us everything when we're in the struggle. But later he does. He does reveal things to us. If we look at trauma, if we look at suffering, that if there's usually a lie there, then it is the truth that sets us free. So anytime we can speak the truth that, well, that God has shared with us, that has got us through things, or the truth that we know, then that's the thing that's going to start to get rid of the lies. That's the things that's going to bring us to that point where, you know, we can live more free. We can, you know, put that suffering behind us and even see that God used it all for good. So that's kind of all I have to say. Did anybody have any questions today, or? No? All right. Well, thank you for being such a good audience.
Thank you so much, Paula, for sharing your experience, your expertise on this matter, and for how to connect with the children in our lives. So another round of applause for Paula. Thank you for being with us.